Hey, legends, welcome back to the Mason Cox Show. Today, another special guest, another massive human. Oh, gosh, gotta love when we get a 7-foot person on the pod because there's not many of us rolling around the world. This man is 7 foot, 213 centimeters tall. He's Croatian descent from Melbourne. Still speaks a bit of Croatian, is what I've been told. And he's got his Bogut podcast. You gotta check it out. Basketball, career, cars, everything is included there. It is absolutely going off. Played college ball at Utah Utes, number 4, retired there after two seasons. 2005 number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft by the Milwaukee Bucks. He's played for Golden State Warriors, Mavs, Cavs, Lakers, Kings, Sydney Kings, 2018 NBL MVP, best defensive player, and all NBL first team. He has got an absolute resume beyond resumes. He is the great man and one of the Australian legends in sport, Andrew Bogut. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. So,
man, I'm excited for this one. Like I said, I feel like we had Jock Landale on, and he was kind of similar in that sense where he played overseas. He's playing in the NBA now. He's playing in the NBA finals. NBA playoffs. And it's awesome to be able to get these people on who've experienced something, I guess, in the reverse of what I've done. You know, you've gone from Australia over to the U.S., and you're one of the OGs. But before we get into all that, I've got to ask, I've been asked to ask you about your orange Valiant and what custom plates you had on it, because I know you're a bit of a custom car man. Is that correct?
Yeah. No, it was that was the first muscle car that I bought as I got drafted. Funny story about that one was I purchased the car and I had never driven manual. The car was manual. Yeah. Or stick shit for you Americans. And I'd never learnt manual because I couldn't fit in our manual cars as a kid. And it pissed me off. So I basically learnt manual over one weekend and then drove it. But the plates I got were, it was basically translated to, it's jebiga. So for all the Balkan listeners don't know what that means. It means effort in Croatian, but it's kind of like a slang. But I believe if you try to get that plate now, Vicros don't let you get it.
It's amazing because I used to drive a 61 Ford Falcon Ranchero, if you can believe that. And that was no chance of me fitting in that thing. I was like, the big wheel was just huge and you had to spread your legs just to get it in there. And then you had the clutch that was always half put in because you couldn't fit your leg in there. I can't imagine what you were like, how you get into some of these cars that you have. Like, obviously you pull the seat all the way back first thing with the tall blokes that we do, but is there any, have you been able to customize some of your cars to make it for a 7-foot player?
Yeah, I had to. The Valiant was pretty good because it was a coupe. So I didn't have any trouble there. Usually leaked my seat back as far as I could, but there are a few cars that I just were on my bucket list. One was I bought a 2010 Shelby GT500 Mustang. When I was in the US, I bought it brand new off the dealer lot, and I could barely fit in it. And because it was manual, to get to the clutch, I was kind of my left knee was hitting kind of the steering wheel between the door and the steering wheel. There wasn't a whole lot of room. So I still bought it and I had to drive the car barefooted to get that extra bit of room. So I always have to drive the car in flip-flops. So that's how bad I wanted the car. I was like, I'm buying this car. Like, I love this car. And I bought it and I'd have to take my shoe off to hit the clutch.
Just love to see you, the big man, just rocking out with no shoes on, just casually out of this classic car.
If you love the car, you got to do it.
What's your, so is that your all-time, if you had a dream car, is that your dream car?
It was a great car to drive. My dream car was probably always probably a Walkinshaw, HSV Walkinshaw from the 80s, just because I always saw him. My dad was a mechanic by trade, a carburetor specialist. So I always saw these hard-up cars coming in that I drew over that never thought I could afford. And it was always one that I liked. Probably the Walkinshaw from back in the day. I thankfully own one today. So, it'd be good fun.
All right. Another passion you've got, and I've been told that you love your watches. Is that correct? Is there any watch that sticks out that you just kind of, is your go-to whenever you go out, or maybe a special event watch that you only wear so often whenever it's something pristine place you're going to?
I just got the John Mayer Rolex not long ago. So the green face Daytona, and I was looking for that for a while. Funnily enough, I got a tip that they're going to be discontinued. So I jumped on that just before they got discontinued. So, they've done pretty well now. But that took me a while to find. I had to source that. I actually found it in the Caribbean islands. It was secondhand, brand new, if that makes sense. So it was unopened, secondhand. I found it through a contact of mine in the US. And then, went through a whole strategy of how to get it get it to Australia and all that kind of stuff. So got it all done.
What's the one event you'd take it out to?
I kind of wear it casually sometimes, to be honest with you. I think it goes with a lot because it's all gold and it's kind of, elegant enough to not be too bright, but can be. But yeah, it definitely goes well with the suit. But I'll sometimes just wear it out casually during the day. And I'm not one of those guys that this watch has to go with this. I just take a different one out every now and then. I don't have a huge collection by any means, but I have a good rotation of 5 to 6 high-end watches that I like to wear.
All right, man. I'm very jealous. But we'll get into the early life. So you're from Melbourne, so a lot of listeners here from Melbourne, and you played Aussie rules in tennis growing up. Now, we had Dustin Fletcher on the podcast also. He did the same. I don't know what the deal is with some of the tall blokes playing tennis. Is that just kind of the go-to whenever you're a child to say it thrown into the tennis program? Because in America, I don't know anyone that grew up really playing tennis. It was just never a thing. But for some reason, every tall person I know that's here, even Chris Ansey, played tennis growing up.
For me, tennis is used loosely in my profile. I still laugh when that gets picked up by people because I didn't play organised tennis. It was more going to the local tennis club and jumping the fence so you didn't have to pay a fee and having a hit. I just love playing tennis. I still love playing tennis to this day. It's one of my favourite sports to play. I'm not a golf guy. I take tennis 10 times out of 10. I like constant action. I don't like to hit, play a shot in golf and then, talk, chat, walk, all that kind of crap. I don't. That's not for me. And I did, Australian rules football. So I did Vic kick. I did taekwondo and gymnastics. I did gymnastics because my sister did it. So I got thrown in that bus, hated it. And then, I ended up, playing basketball just at my dad's warehouse. He had a hoop drilled into the wall that was from the neighbours. And then I wanted to change to basketball. And the parents were like, look, if you change sports again, this is it. Like, we're not, fees, equipment, all that, it's expensive. We're low to middle class. So they're like, if you change, this is it. And I'm like, I'm all in basketball. And thankfully, it was the right decision.
All right, man. What? Because you played for the Victoria Junior State team, and was there a certain point, I guess, you drop all the other sports, right? And then you go, okay. Well, you probably at some point knew you're going to be freakishly tall at 7 feet, and you're like, okay, if this is going to happen, I'm going to have a high probability of being a decent basketball player. Was there a moment, I guess, like in your kind of early days that you kind of just go, wow, I can actually be pretty damn decent at this basketball thing?
Not really. My development was super late. So I got cut from a bunch of teams from, 11 to 15, 16. Ended up going to the AIS. And I was just a super late developer. Like my development was from 16, 17 up until 20, and I'm in the NBA. Like, that's how quick it happened for me. And that's why no one could really believe kind of the path that I took, because all the junior coaches and all that, like, oh, no, don't think it'll be that good, don't think it'll be a pro, all that kind of stuff. And then just put the time and effort and the work in. As you know, as a big fella, it's kind of hard because I was tall young, and then I stopped growing at about 12, 13, just completely didn't grow for a year. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? Like, all my friends were passing me, all my teammates were passing me, and it forced me to play a different position. I played a bit of small forward, a bit of two guard, learn how to handle the ball. But the hardest thing, as you would know, is when you're a tall fella, when you have these massive growth spurts, then, it whacks your body goes out of whack. Like, coordination, you're starting to trip over. Like, you're doing regular stuff that you did every day, and it's feeling uncoordinated. Like, what the hell's going on? And that's the hardest part is training out of those growth spurts to get some coordination back and get some touch and some feel. Left foot before right and right foot before left. It sounds stupid to most people, but when you have these massive growth spurts, I see it with my kids already. Like, my 6-year-old, he's going up and down through that. Like, where his footwork gets really good, he's playing soccer right now, and then all of a sudden has a bit of growth spurt and he's falling over again. Like, you just got to progress through. But yeah, my journey, man, like, really, it was like someone lit a firework at about 16, 17, and just within a couple of years, I'm standing on the stage shaking David Stern's hand.
It's insane to me, like, and the one thing that, like, I'm reading up and doing a bit of research on you that kind of blew my mind is just, it seemed as though within like the 2, 3, 4 years, you had all this experience in life that most people wouldn't even be able to dream about. Like, you go to college, and you're one of the first, like, Australians to go over there and be successful in college, the Utah Utes, for 2 seasons, and you just dominate. And then you dominate so much, you get your jersey retired for, which is pretty cool. Have you gone back and actually seen the jersey retirement? Did they put it up in the rafters, or how's it work?
Yeah, it's up in the rafters. I've photos sent. I've been meaning to go back, but there's potential Hall of Fame induction in the future as well, hopefully. So I'm definitely going to go back, but the last 3 or 4 years hasn't been the best to travel. So I definitely need to make a US trip over the next couple of years. And I think the reunion for our championship with the Warriors will be coming up pretty soon too. So probably try to tie all that in at the same time. But yeah, Utah was awesome, man. Like I had a great time there. Very fond memories of Utah. Beautiful place to live, in my opinion. I really miss the mountains. You realize, like, once you leave there, you take the mountains for granted because you wake up and there's these beautiful hills and Rockies and whatnot. And then you leave there, and I ended up going to Milwaukee, which is flat as a tack. I ended up missing those mountains, waking up and seeing them every day.
Did you go into the draft, you drafted number 1, and we'll talk about the chaos and everything else of like being a number 1 draft pick and then being the first Australian to ever do that. And then Ben Simmons has now been the number 1 draft pick since then. But you go from there to having this, I guess, like, did you feel like there was pressure? Was it just because you were the first one to ever do it? You kind of were just like, hey, let's get into it. Like, this, who knows where this will go? Like, we'll just kind of roll into it and see how we turn out. But you're kind of one of the first. You're the first from Australia, like I said, but like internationally, I feel like there wasn't a lot of people who are getting drafted number 1. And then, you got yourself and some other guys from Europe that start getting drafted number 1. And you're like, okay, is it extra pressure because you're not from there and you're playing in a foreign league and you're touted as the best player out there that is existing in the sport?
Yeah, look, there was some pressure. I was pretty lucky to go to a small market in Milwaukee. I think that really helped kind of my journey. I think going to LA or New York with that pick would have been much tougher just because of the media attention, the scrutiny and ups and downs, whereas Milwaukee was, much more tame. But it was funny, back then it was news in Australia, but it wasn't really, there's still footy on the front page when I got drafted, right? Like it's just so weird. There was no social media. I don't think people in Australia realised how big of a deal that was, to be, just be drafted really is a big deal. And then to be top 10, top 5, number 1 was a huge deal. But I was lucky that I went to a small market, I think. And I mean, nothing can really prepare you for it. Like people say, like, how did you get through it? You gotta make your own way and make your mistakes and learn how to deal with it along the way. You can do every bit of media training. You can have the best mentor in your life, but until you're thrown into that limelight, no one else can do it for you.
Oh, it's so true. And yeah, it's funny how you say that because, like, obviously, like you said, the football dominates like the newspaper here, and then I find it amazing that people don't realize how big some of the things that Australians are doing overseas, and like it kind of blows my mind. Like we're somewhat insular in the fact that like we just kind of think, oh well, this is what's interesting for the Melbourne public or whatever it is, and they don't realize, I guess, how big things are outside of the bubble of the country, really. But I want to ask you this because I've always found the draft night hilarious. Like some of the suits rolling around on the night, some of the gold chains that people are wearing, like all this stuff nowadays, it is a full production. Was like, whenever you got drafted up there, was there anyone that was just, you looked out and was like, what are you wearing? Like, in what world like are you thinking this is okay?
That's a nightly basis in the NBA, mate. It's not just the draft. It's, and that's each to their own. But, I was more kind of business kind of, businessy, nice suit, nice tie. That was good for me. But I did pull out a white suit one game, which was crazy. But for the most part, yeah, I see all kinds of stuff. As you see now with all the, the NBA walk-ins to locker rooms is basically a Project Runway, fashion show. But each to their own. Some guys, want to be models and basketball players. I can't hate on that. Not me, definitely not me. And I was giving shit to a lot of those guys when I was playing with guys that would wear funky stuff. I'd definitely get into them and get after them a little bit.
You take shit on guys. Did you actually know what they wore to like the game beforehand, and then just prep yourself to like talk shit during the game to them?
Not so much guys on other teams. It would be guys on my own team I'd go after. Oh. Like, what are you doing? What are you wearing? What is that? We had a couple of guys that would wear some crazy stuff. Sometimes we'd pull out their outfits out of their locker and put them in the front of the locker room if it was really funky. Put it like right near the whiteboard so everyone could see what they were wearing. Wow. But then, so some guys got pretty antsy about all that, so we had to kind of turn it back. But we had all kinds of weird stuff being worn in games.
Who's the worst dressed player you've ever played with?
I wouldn't say worst, but the guy that got it the most, because he was a young fella, was Festus Ezeli. He used to wear some crazy stuff, man. He's Nigerian descent or from Nigeria, so he's got a good mix of African culture, mixing it with American, but some of the stuff you were just like, what are you doing, man? Like, so a couple of our teammates got into it. And I remember one game he wore, I think it was three quarter pant khakis with loafers and some weird shirt. And he was hurt at the time. Mark Jackson was a coach. He walked out onto the floor, come sit on the bench during the game. And Mark Jackson turned to him and said, no, go back to the locker room, buddy. and the worst thing was, like, we were, before the game, we were killing him. Like, you can't wear that. What are you doing, dude? No, it's okay. I'm like, you cannot wear that. That's ridiculous, man. Like, and we had the business casual rule at that point. So we're like, you might get fined, but not only that, you're going to get laughed at. Not fine. And the fact that he walked out on the court and the coach was just like, get your ass back in the locker room with that outfit on, made it even funnier.
Oh gosh, I can only imagine just like a dog with a tail between his legs walking back to the locker room.
He was shattered.
I've got to ask you this now, being the number 1 draft pick, bit of pressure and everything else. Now, what was the one thing that kind of sticks out in your mind that was your welcome to the NBA kind of moment?
My welcome to the NBA moment came a couple of months into the season. I was a rookie, so I had all the rookie duty stuff I had to do. So I had to go get donuts before every shoot around. I had to get birthday cakes for whenever it was someone's birthday. Just mundane, annoying, errandy type stuff. Hey, Rook, get me a towel. Hey, Rook, get me a drink, practice, all that kind of stuff, right? And the vets were on me a fair bit. Obviously, being number 1 pick, even more on me. My other rookie was Ursan Ilyasova. Didn't speak a word English, and he was in the G League a lot of the rookie years, so it was just me solo. And I hit a game winner against the Spurs my rookie year. I think it was in November-ish, or just somewhere around November, early December. Hit this walk-off game winner against the Spurs. They were the previous year champs. And get to the locker room, I'm pumped. Everyone's getting around me, and I was just like, fuck your rookie shit. Blah, 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 right? And one of the vets was like, yeah, nice game winner. But guess what? You're still a rookie tomorrow. And I was like, oh, like just super deflated after that. Just like, and the next day I was back being rookie. So just the reality check of like, yeah, you're on a high right now, but you're still a rookie tomorrow, buddy. And we're still going to get our donuts and everything that we need. So that was a nice welcome moment to the NBA.
They always put you back in their place. I feel like it's just the way the Americans do it whenever you're in your first year. You've played against some amazing NBA stars, and the likes of like Kevin Love, Kevin Garnett, like Shaquille O'Neal, some of these guys that are household names. Was there any, I guess, like opponent every single week that you kind of came up against that, not every week that you came up against, but whenever you would go and play them, that was a bit of like a rivalry for you, or just maybe like a mental kind of someone you had to try to get over that was like really tough to play against, that, maybe whenever you saw them on the upcoming schedule, you just kind of got a bit nervous, or was it something you look forward to as far as a challenge for yourself?
A few guys, like one guy I struggled with was Yao Ming. He was, 7'6", had the shooting touch of a guard, and he got hot against me a few nights I played him, and there was nothing I could do, like playing textbook great defense, pushing him off the block, making him shoot turnaround jumpers, and he's just all net. And, he's 7'6", and he shoots it above his head. So he's shooting from like, an 8-foot vantage point. And when he gets hot, you're just like, all right, like, what can I do? So I had to attack him at the other end. But another guy that I'd always get into it with was Kevin Garnett. So funny you mentioned him. We always he had this thing where he tried to mess with international players a lot and try to get into him a little bit and all that kind of stuff. And I remember he did it to me. Like the first time he did it to me, I gave him an elbow back, and he kind of left me alone from there. But then we'd always get into it every game. Like we'd get into the argy-bargies, double text, all that kind of stuff. And I think with a guy like that, you got to go back at him. Like they're trying to, he's trying to see how you react and see if you go into your shell and if it can affect your game. And it didn't really affect me, and I gave it back to him as good as he gave it to me. So there were probably two guys that stood out.
He's such a player that he played the real between the ears game, Kevin Garnett, and he was just like insane the way he kind of took a mentality towards games. Is there anything he kind of like said to even not only yourself, but other players, and even beyond just Kevin Garnett, but like anyone else that kind of said stuff to get under skins of players that, I don't know. I feel like nowadays with mics and stuff, maybe people are a bit more cautious on what they say on the court and things along that nature. Like, but back in the day, and whenever you were playing, like I just feel like it was a bit It was a bit less controlled, to say that. Like, I think you could probably kind of get into each other a bit more than you probably can today, just because you'd be nervous of what the backlash will be. Was there any moments that stick out about like someone, getting under the skin of another player?
Not really. The NBA is the trash talk's so boring. It's always, I'll mess you up, I'll knock you out, see me after the game, all that kind of stuff. It's always the same crap. As soon as the lights go out, no one's seeing you after the game. I've only ever seen two guys go at it after a game. But generally it's all just talk when the lights are on. It's all bravado for the cameras and all that kind of stuff. So whenever I get into it with a guy and they start barking that, I'd just be like, oh, dude, like, cool. Yeah, okay. Let's do it. You want to meet afterwards? Cool. Okay. Because it's just like you hear it every other game. But nothing too crazy. Like, generally families, kids, wives, you don't touch that kind of stuff. I know a few people have. That's where you don't go. But as far as everything else, like, I played with Draymond Green, so he's probably the most wildest of he'll go for something. He'll try to say something to really hit home that he's read in the media, or something even about your personal life that's not family related. He'll go for the soul crusher. So Paul Pierce one was a funny one from a number of years ago, and he said, "You're not Kobe Bryant. Stop chasing that retirement tour." Just stuff like that. He has no shame, and he's going to try to get in your head and try to get you off as best he can.
Oh man, I love it. Some of the Draymond stories are just absolute gold. Man, we'll talk about anything, but we'll go into 2015 finals, right? One of the greatest teams to ever play an NBA final. Yourself included. We've got the names of Matthew Dellavedova, Kyrie Irving, LeBron James, Richard Jefferson, Kevin Love, J.R. Smith, Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala, Klay Thompson, Anderson Varejao, Steph Curry. I remember looking at that, and this is before kind of like me understanding it. It was like my first year coming to Australia, and looking back, do you realize the history of some of those players and how good the players on that court were that you were playing with at the time? Like, I look at those names now and I'm just like, that is an insane like list of people that were playing in a series together. And I'll look at it as one of the best series that ever was. Do you look back and just kind of think, wow, it was a crazy time to be a part of?
Yeah, looking back now, obviously not playing anymore, and still seeing Steph and Klay go on to this day, just being able to play with probably two of what will be the greatest shooters of all time is amazing. And just being able to compete at the highest level in your given sport, playing against the best, playing against the Tim Duncans and the LeBron Jameses and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that final series was pretty crazy. I mean, it was such a battle, and I guess we learned the hard way about the momentum of a 7-game series and the one that we lost and we're up 3-1. It's just amazing compared to most sports. That's why the 7-game series to me is just generally it is the better team that wins it, because you have to win 4 times no matter what happens. Injuries do play a part, suspensions obviously, all that kind of stuff, but the momentum shifts in those. You can feel like the worst team in the world after game 2 because you just lost by 40. And then you can win game 3, and everything can change, as we're seeing in this playoffs right now. Some of the series is going on. So definitely something that you reminisce on. The older and older I get, the more I'll reminisce on kind of those stories and tell them to the kids and the grandkids.
Describe, I guess, like the moment the siren goes, you've become an NBA champion, you've accomplished that goal in life. Like, what's the first thing that comes to mind on the court?
I think most people say the same thing. It's relief. It really is, because it's so pent up, and it's so everything's the pressure, the nerves, the media. Like you got to remember, like at that point of the year, you're the only really big basketball game going on in the world, right? Like it's June. I think EuroLeague's kind of finishing, so maybe you got a little bit in Europe, but no other leagues are really on. It's the finals, the best league in the world. There's no other playoff games to talk about. It's just so like the scrutiny on that month or that 3 weeks is so immense. The travel, the back and forth, the mind game. So for most of the guys said it was just relief. It was relief. Obviously, you love the fact that you won, but it's like, we did it, and that was probably the biggest thing that stuck out. Even some of our best players were saying the same thing, just relieved we got it done, because there's so much pressure. And, you see how much Steve Kerr's aged over the last 10 years with all that success, right? Like some of these coaches that don't go deep into the playoffs and all that, it's almost less stress to an extent because, the deeper you go, the more expectation lifts. And, you can definitely see it with Steve. I think he's aged 20 years and 10 years just from all the stress of trying to continue to win championships.
We'll get to Steve because I want to talk about a little connection he's got. But we got this. Where's your ring at the moment?
In a safe.
Do you ever bring it out? Like I feel like
sometimes for kids, like if I do camps and stuff, I'll bring it along. But it's massive, man. Like you can't really wear it, and it's really blingy. And I don't even know what it's valued at. It'd be at 20 or 30K USD. So it's not something you want to leave hanging around because it's pretty easy to steal. So I've got it, tucked away nice and safe and pull it out I've shown my kids they don't give a shit and it's like, whatever, it's a ring because they don't understand yet. They're starting to understand, like 6-year-olds starting to figure out like, okay, you played in the NBA, like, because people come up to me sometimes when I'm out and about for a photo or have a chat. And so he's starting to figure it out. And 4-year-olds obviously starting to figure it out, but I just don't think they realise what that ring is yet. They will in another number of years, I think.
Oh, it's kind of fun and interesting to get like a ring or a medallion and stuff, and you just never really wear it. Like it's kind of like just kind of sits there and you're like, oh, it's there to pull out as a bit of an accomplishment kind of thing, but like you just never really see it on a day-to-day basis. It's kind of tucked away because it's so precious and something you don't want to actually, like you want to have security around it. So you don't actually get to see it quite often.
The value in those kind of things isn't the item, it's the memories that it brings. So, like everyone as you get older and sentimental in our old age, you realise that like you can own like beautiful watches, you can own trophies, but like it's the journey to get them, or it's the funny story I just told about finding the Rolex, or it's it's the memories made, and I think that's what the trophies are important for. Like these things behind me, if I lost them tomorrow, whatever. Like it's more. I'd be sad because that reminder of the memory. I'll pick up the ring, it'd take me back to that time mentally, right? Where I could actually relive some of the stories. Oh, remember this, remember that. That's what it signifies, but it could be valued at $1. Like, you know what I mean? It's just, it's one of those things. I think most people that have things of value will say the same thing.
Yeah, it's so true. I think whenever you're in it, people don't realize it, but like once you kind of get towards the back end and stuff of careers and you realize it's more of that journey and the special memories you create. Like you can have as many memorabilia of basketball shoes and boots and all that, but it's not that. It's the actual stuff that comes with it from you and your personal experience with it. But we're going to that next year. So the record games, 73 games won. And he broke Steve Kerr's Bulls record to do that. Going into that series, having the success of the season and then facing one of the best teams again on a second time, the second year in a row. And then after that, it's like just debilitating loss. Like, what was the feeling that of like having such a successful year and then unfortunately not being able to finish the year?
I mean, yeah, it sucked. It was awful. It's just because we couldn't put a hammer on that 73-9. It's always going to have an asterisk on it now, because we couldn't finish off and win. And the fact that we were up 3-1, and then Draymond gets suspended, and then I do my knee. In game 5, Andre Iguodala's back was like, his back was so messed up. He had like chronic back spasms throughout that series trying to guard LeBron. He was obviously instrumental this season before in guarding LeBron. So yeah, it sucks. It's tough. But look, at the end of the day, I'm thankful to get one. Like you think about the number of there's 15 players on the NBA roster, generally season to season. Within a decade, there's usually a team that's going to repeat once or twice. Or there's 2 or 3 teams that win the majority of a decade. You're in that elite group of 100 odd players generally that has an NBA championship ring for that decade. So thankful for that. But yeah, the 73-9 thing, it was just an amazing year. Other than losing in 7, I just remember the regular season. Like we won so many games that regular season that we shouldn't have won. Like we had games that were down like 18 going into the 4th, and Steph and Clay just get going, and we just grind out a win. So it just felt like we would never lose. It really did. And it was just an interesting year as far as the dynamic. We had guys that were, when we were 60 and whatever, we had, 10, 15 games left. We had some guys that were like, let's go for the record. We had other guys that were like, let's just be healthy, So then there was that in the locker room debate of guys saying, should we go for the record? Shouldn't we? Steve, most of the guys wanted to go for the record, and Steve left it to go for it. Then we did have some injuries later on in the finals, so who knows in hindsight, but there's no right or wrong way about it, but it was an interesting dynamic just within that locker room of how, we should handle it moving forward.
Yeah, and you mentioned Steve Kerr, and he's looked at as one of the all-time great coaches now, and I find him, I think he's almost kind of gone beyond just a coach of the NBA. He's able to have his statements in the media about things going on in the world, He's very well-spoken human whenever it comes to different opinions around some of the tougher things to talk about. Now, he's an interesting human. Is there any lessons that kind of stick out from him that you apply to your everyday life and a bit of, I guess, I don't know, like help that he's been able to give you throughout the years that really sticks out to you?
I mean, there's a mix of stuff. I think just the way he handled personalities, I think, was probably the biggest thing. I don't know what it's like in the AFL right now, but it's probably still a bit more harder coaching at times. But the NBA is now all about people management. It's not, you can be the best off the whiteboard coach in the world. You could be the best, run the best offensive set. But if you can't have, sometimes not even communication, just a good relationship with your players and knowing each personality and all that kind of stuff, you're not going to survive them. We've seen it numerous times in the game. And I think Steve understood that. Steve understood that different guys, their buttons are different. This guy I can light up and swear and go red in the face and he'll bounce back. And then this guy I can't do that with, or this guy needs a hug, or that guy needs tough love. Like, you need to know that. And that's what Steve's really good at. I mean, probably the thing that when I do speaking gigs and whatnot, that I speak about with Steve is he'd always mention that, you guys aren't paid. Majority of your salary isn't just for basketball. It's what you give up. And it's, like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, they can't just wake up and go, I'm going to go to the local shopping centre. They can't do that. Like that privilege, it's a privilege, right? Like, it's that simple thing that everyday people do is taken away because Steph did that one day and had to close down the mall, shopping centre, had to close it down for security reasons, right? So that, you're at dinner and people have their camera phones out taking photos of you, and you got like a piece of steak on your fork, about to put in your mouth, people taking photos of you, right? So that's where Steve got relayed to us. This is why you guys are paid what you're paid. It's basketball, but it's also you're giving up your personal life. Your kids are in the limelight. Your wife's in the limelight. You make a small mistake in your life, whatever it may be, that most 20-year-olds make. It's magnified 100-fold. So his conversation around that was one thing that always stuck with me. And I tell other athletes that I speak to that, that's why you pay a decent salary to do what you do. You got to deal with all that other crap that people think you should just because you're an athlete,
How do you handle that?
As a young fella, it was like I said earlier, I was unknown. I didn't know how to handle it. I had this thing where, the Australian media is very tabloidy and for, still towards the end of my career, every article was like, the headline was to do with money. So it'd be like $50 million man or $20 million man or, and I kind of, it bothered me a little bit because I'm like, I'm human being first and like everything's about money. And it kind of bothered me because I'm like, so I was kind of not trying to put it aside or afraid of it. I was trying to hide the fact that I made that money, but I'm like, at one point in my career, I got to the point where like, what am I hiding it for? It's public anyway.
Yeah. And
I was fortunate enough to get into a league that pays you a lot of money for your services. Do I agree that we should be paid more than fireys and ambos? No, I don't. But that's a totally different conversation. But then I got to a point where I just was like, you know what? It is what it is. So yeah, how I handled it was hard at times. It was, just one of those things that you have to navigate as a young fella. And I was, 20 years old. I wasn't, 20. Yeah, I couldn't even legally drink in the US in the first half of my rookie year. So I remember a couple of veterans would like try to sneak me into places and whatnot. And, I'm making $5-10 million that year, right? Like, and I'm just like, what the hell would I do with this? I have no idea about anything. Don't even know, barely knew how to pay a utilities bill or a light bill because I just come out of college where everything was done for me. So there was all that to deal with as well. But yeah, it's very, very interesting. And that's why we see, especially in the US, with NFL, baseball, basketball, NHL, a lot of these young fellas get in trouble early in their career because it's the unknown. You got to make mistakes and learn from it.
It's like the John Morants at the moment. Yeah, it's interesting. Is there any advice you'd give to, because there's so many Australians that are coming to the NBA now and they're kind of learning that lesson of, you're going to be in the spotlight and on a lot bigger probably spectrum than you realize. Is there any advice you'd give some of those players that are over there at the moment?
Just have a tight group. The larger the group, the more chance of someone's going to, try to pull a fast one over you. I see so many teammates and guys in the NBA, we talk about them getting screwed out of business deals or whatever, but I've seen more often than not it's family and friends that that do that. So I would say keep your circle very tight, and just try to be self sufficient to an extent. Like when I first got into the league, I had someone that did everything for me. Paid my bills, everything, right? Like even just to transfer money, I'd have to call someone, hey, can you move this money to here so I can get it here? And then it bothered me, right? I was like, you know what? Like I probably should take onus of my own finances and learn how to do this stuff. So then one day when I retire, I don't have to, pay someone to like, hey, how much money do I have in my bank account? So learn how to be self-sufficient, I think is something that's very important. And it's only an hour, a couple of hours a week to learn and maintain that. And I think that's pretty important.
It's so true. I think, like, compare that to my journey. One of my biggest things I'm so grateful for is I went to college and I had to pay my own way. I wasn't on scholarship or anything. And then I learned all the life lessons that, you need for the rest of your life of paying bills and how to be a responsible human. And it sets you up a really, really good thing where I guess like in the US sometimes, because you have so much going on, they actually just handle that for you. And I see some of the AFL players coming through, they have their bank accounts are handled by their agent. And I'm like, you have to, at some point, this guy's not going to be here for you to walk you through every single little part of life. Like you have to be able to grow up at some point, and something you gotta learn that lesson at some point, and hopefully you can learn it sooner rather than later. We'll move on to basketball Australia. There's the World Cup's coming up. I'm stoked. I'm stoked for this. I know we had USA played Australia here in Melbourne. They beat us. And us, I don't know. I'm half and half now. It's just shit. I don't know what I call it. But had Australia beat America, and now they're kind of on this streak, right? So like you were kind of one of the OGs that came through, and you kind of set the scene for a lot of Australians in the basketball community. And you talk about the media giving you scrutiny and everything else, but they weren't giving you the props for setting the founding stones for some of these players that are now making this kind of money and over in the States and having the success that they are having at the moment. What's your thoughts on basketball Australia now and where it's been able to transform into over your years?
Yeah, come a long way, long way. The Buddhist program especially, from where it was in the early 2000s to where it is now. We famously lost to New Zealand in 2001 for the 2002 World Championships, got knocked out. We didn't even go to the World Championships that year. And where we've gone from then to now is, tenfold. And I think a lot has gone into the work that a lot of us have done off the court. We're setting the culture and making sure that, there's non-negotiables we have with the Boomers. The national team's an interesting dynamic. You wouldn't really experience it in footy, but you've got, everyone that comes to a national team is the man or the woman on their team. They're the number one, number two options for their club team. So you all of a sudden bring in 12 people, and now you've got, all of them think they should be it. I should be the guy. I should be the scorer. So you got to understand, you got to play a role to make that whole thing hum properly, and that's the hardest thing. And we didn't have a lot of success with that in the 2000s. We had, sometimes some guys would come through that program that would use it as, they might be a free agent with their club team. They might use it, I'm going to Olympics and have a good Olympics and get paid by someone in Europe. And it's like, well, that's not the right mindset, buddy, for this program. Like we don't want that. Like we need you to do X, Y, Z because we already have someone scoring, or vice versa. Hey, we need you to just be a physical presence and rebound and block shots. And that's the hardest thing, is trying to relay that to people. And we finally got that right over probably the last decade, probably since 2015. I think we've got it right. And, it's transcended into 2016 and 19. We finished fourth, just missed out on the medal. And then we finally get, a bronze in 21. And hopefully, with the World Cup coming in this year and then the Olympics, hopefully, we can get a silver, if not a gold. And it was just a mindset change, man. Like we had kind of this mindset of like, as long as we get through the pool rounds to the next round, that's a win for little old Australia. And it got to the point where I was like, nah, that's not a. You're basically saying, hey, let's try to get eighth before the tournament. Like, who the hell goes into any tournament? And you got to be realistic, right? Like sometimes you don't have the squad that can really compete, but you still want to always set your goal as number one. And then if you finish third, great, you celebrate it. But we had a defeated mindset going into some of these tournaments, which really pissed me off. So once we address that, fix that, and then all of a sudden we've got 3 guys in the NBA, and then we've got 5 guys, and we've got 10 guys, and now we've got the number of guys in the NBA on a consistent basis. You bring them back into the Boomers program, it makes the program better, it makes everything better around us, coaching gets better, the demands from all of a sudden the players to the federation grew. We said, hey, we demand more professionalism from you now, Basketball Australia. Like we're not we're not washing our own clothes anymore in a bathtub like I did when I first joined the Boomers. We're not doing that anymore. Like, just so then things got better. Our food needs to be better. Our travel arrangements need to be better. So it was all collective, and sometimes there was tough conversations both ways. But that's what you need to do, and that's why the Boomers program is probably in the best position it's been in a long, long time.
What is it you think? Because I look at the Boomers program and I think the word that comes to mind is like ego-less. Like there's no one that has a massive ego that comes on and says, I'm it. Everyone look at me. Like it is a pure team base, kind of like the Spurs back in the day, of like, I don't really care who gets a shot. We're just going to get the best open shot that we can. That's going to be the highest percentage. What is it that, I guess like, is it the Australian culture of just not like tall poppy syndrome saying like, no, we're all even, like, and we're all going to spread the love kind of thing? Or is it just the way, I guess, like this program's been set up that they know they're going to be more valuable as a team rather than putting all the, eggs in one basket with one or two players?
Well, do you want to win? That's the thing. Do you want to go to a tournament and bomb out, at 8th or 7th and complain for a 7-8 position at the end of it? Or do you want to have a chance to win? And there has to be buy-in, and you got to, you see it a little bit in pro sports, but in the national team, it's like I said, it's so much more magnified. Like you might be a 20-10 guy on your team, but we don't need that. We need 10 and 10 from you, and we need this from you. And now all of a sudden, look at a guy like Chris Golding, who's a gunner in the NBL. When he comes to the national team, his defense goes up tenfold. He's a great defender with the national team, and he's more of a feet set 3-point shooter for us. Like we don't need you at the top of the key creating because we have Paddy or Joey or whatever, right? So it's all these guys giving up some of their game for the greater good of the team. And I think we just had a good buy-in. We had no nonsense guys at the right time that would just say, if you don't want to do that, like we don't need you on the team. And we have cup or players that have not made the team because of that. They just couldn't fit in as a piece of the puzzle. They want to be the whole thing, and that's where we're really, really strict on. And I think it's successful to have that. You got to kind of know your role and buy into it.
I've got to ask this now. At the moment with the Ben Simmons stuff that's going on and him being left out of the team, now, what's your kind of opinion around the circumstance with him going on and bringing him into the Australian team or not? And, whether that's going to be something that I do or we'll see, we'll soon find out. But what's your thought process around what's going on with that?
I don't know the behind the scenes. I mean, Brian Gordon came out 10 days ago and said, we're excited Ben's going to be part of the program. I don't know if that was them trying to smoke out Ben and see what was going on. A couple of days later, Ben puts out a statement saying, I'm focused on my back injury rehab and I look to be part of the Boomers in the future. So everything's in the wording right. And then a couple of days ago, we've announced our squad, but there's always a spot there for Ben. So, look, I was part of the process of trying to get him to play during those games against Team USA in Melbourne, which would have then went on to the World Cup. Didn't go too well. At the end of the day, Ben wants to play. I think they'll welcome him, but I'm just really cognizant of not holding the program to ransom, continuously just waiting of, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Is he going to play? And I don't think that's good for the culture and what they're trying to build. I understand he's one of the best players in the world, but, if I would just like a hard decision. Like, if you don't want to play, just say you don't want to play and we move on with life. So I hope he does. He's yet to put on a Boomers jersey. I hope he does sooner rather than later, but I think he's at a crossroad in his career, to be honest with you. I think he's at a point in his career where he knows this is a huge off-season for him, not just for health, but I think his mentals, man. I think he needs to get back to that Ben Simmons that we saw in Philly early in his career. He's got a lot of work to do, and I think a lot of it's going to be, mental for him, just trying to get back on the court confident, and getting back to that position.
It'd be so interesting because, in my personal opinion, I think going and playing for the Boomers and being in a team family environment like that actually might be one of the best things for him.
I mean, if you buy in, that's the thing. Exactly. If you fully buy in, if you come and you don't hang out with the team, you just show up for practices and games, and is that really being part of the Boomers program? I'm not saying you do that, but there is NBA players that are involved in national teams that kind of still act like they're on an NBA team, and it's I'm the big dog and you guys are the pleb. I'm not saying they do that, but you never know. If you're going to fully commit and buy in, yeah, it can be hugely beneficial for him. And I think they'll get, guys like Joey and, Giddy and Paddy and whatnot will get his confidence up and get him back to playing, open floor Ben Simmons basketball. I think it'd do wonders for him. But, he does have that injury. Hopefully he gets that right first, but it would be nice. I mean, you just think about having him, playing that point forward, point center role at times with the way the game's going, small ball, that's a pretty tough lineup if you can get him healthy.
And do you think, looking forward to the championships, right? I feel like this World Championships has got probably more talk around it than any other I've ever seen or heard. I don't know, maybe it's just because it's in the same time zone as us and up there, but I'm excited. Like, who do you think are going to be the top teams coming out of this going into the championships? Is it going to be the Australia, the US? Like, is there any kind of wild card you think has got some players that are going to really kind of show up in this championship coming up?
Yeah, it's hard to know just because we don't know exactly who's putting their hand up for every team. I think Canada's the elephant in the room generally. Like, they just never get their whole squad playing. And if they got their whole squad of Canadians playing in the NBA, Jamal Murray and so on, they got a really good squad on paper. So it's just a matter of getting it together. The problem they're going to have is they got a lot of guys that are, once again, really good players in their club teams. Can they buy in for their group? And they don't really have a longevity of a culture or whatnot like other clubs do. So I think Canada's a sneaky one if they can get things right. The Euros are always there, like, your Lithuanians, your Croatians, your Serbians, they're always in the mix. And then the US is always a favourite. So I think I like to have Australia out there. France, I think, is going to be very good. They've been in the top four of the last 3 or 4 tournaments. You've got, Wembanyama and a few other young guys coming up through there. Spain, you just can't doubt. I mean, I thought they would have fallen off the pedestal the last couple of campaigns, but they're right up there again. Argentina somehow squeaks in. Brazil's pretty talented. So there's so much, and the game's now grown so much, and you just don't know. You don't know who's going to be that Finland. Like, they're in a position where they got a gunner on their team in Markkanen. So in our group too. So he can drop 40 on any given night. Most improved player and absolute gunner for his national team. So there's a lot. And I think our group's, it's a sleepy, sneaky group. Germany, you have Schroeder and a few other guys play. Finland, even Japan with Hachimura, won't be easy beats. So it's going to be a tough, sneaky group to get out of.
Do you still have a bit of an affiliation with the Croatian team? I know you love Toni Kukoc, and growing up, do you still have that kind of like hope that they're just going to come out of nowhere and just play well? Like, is it kind of one of those things now? They're not probably as highly touted as they were back in the day of his time.
I mean, back in the day at the time, you have to remember it was a really testing time within Croatian history. Yeah. Croatia had just formed independence in the early 90s and went to their first Olympics as Croatia in 92 with the late great Drazen Petrovic and Tony, and so the Croatian community all around the world, it was a really, really testing, passionate time. Even with soccer, it was the same thing. I'd always support Croatia at the World Cups, albeit because Australia was never in the World Cups as a young fella. Like, they never qualified. And then the one year that Croatia finally qualified, I'd grown up supporting Croatia. Australia finally qualified, and they get put in the same pool as Croatia. So I'm like, it was tough. Obviously, supporting Australia, but I've supported Croatia for so long in World Cups because Australia was there. But yeah, I mean, I still support a lot of Croatian sports. I've got a lot of friends over there, families over there as well. Still got a lot of family over there, and was going every year in the NBA off-season until COVID hit. And looking forward to getting back over there in the next couple of months.
What would you do in Croatia? What's the number one thing you look forward to whenever you're going to the off seasons?
It's beach. Yeah, it's the Mediterranean's beautiful. I mean, the food, the culture, it's just different. It's much more community. So it's rather than be on your phone, let's catch up. Let's just be at the cafe, catch up for coffee, and people just sit there for 3 hours and have 3 coffees or 3 beers, or alcohol starts. There's no timeline for when alcohol starts in Croatia in the summers. By 10, 11 a.m. they're already getting the wines out. It's just different. People are not as well off as we are in the Western world as far as material things and financially, but I think they have the mix of quality of life really down pat. So I had an apartment on an island down there for a number of years, about a decade, and I'd make sure I went there for about a month, a year, and then the off season, and had a little high school gym that I could work out in as well, so that helped. And I'd work out in the mornings and then just go to the beach and just lay in the sun, I'd go for a swim, go to different things, and yeah, it's really cool, especially in the summer for people that have visited the Mediterranean. People always talk about South of Greece, Italy, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Croatia's right up there as far as beauty of Mediterranean.
It is a beautiful place, and it's so good. I think the detox of like the pressure, like we've talked about, and everything else of like the league, and then finally getting that chance just to go, like exhale, be able to go over, spend time in my own kind of like enjoyment space of, home. It kind of feels like is this. There's nothing that you can really describe like the feeling of you just being in your own element, and then all this stress and everything else just kind of like washes away. And I feel like maybe that's Croatia to you, and hopefully you kind of get back there soon. We'll move on to the NBL. Now, you've been involved with the Sydney Kings for a number of years now. You've played for them, and like I said, NBL MVP, won the championship, a lot. So it's interesting to me. I want to ask you, you've seen it grow like exponentially over the last 5 to 10 years, right? What do you think? Because now they've got this Ignite lead. They've come in, they've seen what the Australians are doing, taking some of their talent over here with LaMelo Ball, and they've kind of made their own league to say, we're going to try to replicate that in the U.S. First of all, what's over the 5-10 years, what's been the biggest difference you've seen in the NBL? Because it has changed tremendously over the years.
I just think just getting local talent back has helped. Obviously, Larry Kerr's been buying the league, opening up his wallet for the most part, investing into the league. But just the marquee rule is genius. Having been able to get Australian talent back on Australian shores. I think a lot of American athletes now see the NBL as a stepping stone to get to the NBA or get back to the NBA. We have a lot of people that reach out to us that are were pretty good NBA players at one point that are trying to make their way back to the NBA that have fallen out for whatever reason, and they see the NBL as a really good path, especially the Sydney Kings. We've had a great track record of producing NBA talent that have gone backwards and forwards, including coaches. So we get a lot of calls as far as that goes. And I think, with the way social media is and technology, that the league is much more accessible now overseas. I have a lot of friends actually that live in the US that watch a lot of our games, which is pretty crazy considering that some of them start 1-2 in the morning, which is really cool. But yeah, the league is now known about as a legit second, third option after the NBA. You still got EuroLeague, but the Ignite program, but you're still playing against kids. I think come over to Australia, you're playing against grown men, and there's a few legends that are local Australian players for certain clubs that are physical and tough, and I think that really prepares kids. I think the NBA scouts, most of them that you ask, would prefer to see talent coming over here because they can get a better analysis of them rather than just playing against what is similar ages or similar levels of physicality in the Ignite League. So I think it's done very well. It's continuing to grow. With TV deal looming in the next year or so, hopefully as well. They can help grow the league, but it's in a good spot. But there's still a lot of work to do. We're doing great things in the Sydney Kings, obviously back-to-back champs. So trying to go for a three-peat is going to be tough. With every championship, we lose basically all of our imports get poached to go overseas and make more money, which has happened again this season. We lose Xavier Cooks. So, yeah, we're kind of in a rebuild phase of trying to find, those imports and those star players. We've restructured our bench. But, yeah, things are going really well, especially, in Sydney. Like we had 18,000 throughout that grand final series. We had a season, a record for our club as far as bums on seats for a season. So things are going really well.
Was it something you always enjoyed and wanted to be a part-time owner and the business side of basketball? Or is that always something you kind of wanted to get into like post-career or throughout your career?
The deal I negotiated was I had an option for ownership upon retirement, and I had the option to either take 10%, which was on the contract when I stopped playing, or I can just get a cash buyout for the value of those shares at the time. I put that in the contract just as I wasn't sure whether I would or wouldn't upon retirement, and I ended up jumping at it just because I like the direction of Paul Smith and our ownership group now with the Deno family, and Luke Longley's on board now, and I think the way we've grown the club, it's been a no-brainer. I think that investment has done very, very well. Thankfully, I kept it in there, but yeah, it was always something that I knew at retirement it could transition me into something that I'm still passionate about, without taking all my time away from my kids, and it probably takes more time than I thought it would being an owner, just because we have a lot of calls. You got to hire coaches, you a GM might call us at 11 p.m. and say, I've got this guy on the hook, I need an extra 20K or 50K to get it done, blah, 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 blah. So there's a lot of work that goes into it. But yeah, I think it was the first deal of its kind in Australian sporting history. So I'm pretty proud that a few other players have tried to do similar things, and hopefully it goes as well for them as it did for me.
It's pretty cool. I always love whenever players kind of get involved in post-career with the business side of things. And I guess like I think about AFL, and AFL doesn't have private ownership, right? Can you talk about the benefits? Because I'll tell people and compare it to like the NBA and ownership in that sense, and like kind of the benefits that come out of it and the financials that come with it. I always kind of think there's an opportunity maybe for the IFL to be privatized somewhat. Can you talk about, I guess, like some of the benefits of the NBL being privately owned and some of the teams and how that's been able to shape it over the years?
First of all, the AFL will never be privately owned. So good luck with that pipe dream, because the government basically owns and runs your league. Just if you didn't know that, yeah, it does.
Well, they remind me constantly.
Yeah. That's not going anywhere. The government's not giving that one up. I can tell you that much. Look, private ownership, it's good and bad. Like there's times where as owners you lose money and you're like, holy crap, like look at that, how many zeros, come after that minus. That's not fun neither. But I think you can, if you run a separate business, or if you're involved in something, you've got a big company, if you do have a bit of a loss, you can offset it, obviously. And we see a lot of people do that in different sports, but it's just different. I think when we can react much faster with private ownership. Say you need to hire, or you need to cut an import, or we've got an opportunity to sign this guy. With private ownership, it happens quickly. If you've got a board that you need to go to do X, Y, Z, things can take a little bit longer. I know the AFL it's a little bit different because they've got a GM and they've got a list manager and all that kind of stuff. But that's the benefits. And generally, I think when you have private ownership, it's generally people that are involved in that ownership group are passionate about the game. They're passionate about the club. They wear their heart on their sleeve. I know our ownership's very passionate about, just winning and losing. You see, like majority owner Paul Smith told him so many times, you got to chill out, man. Like, because he takes losses harder than the players. Honestly, like he takes losses so hard, man. Like driving home's dead silence. Like he's probably depressed the next day, and then he's getting better the second day and the third day. But it shows that you need owners like that care and that want to do the right thing by their club. And sometimes they overstep the mark, sometimes they don't. But you want that passion. I think you don't see that with corporatized type ownership structures, because you don't even know who the person is, right? It's a board of all these people that you don't really know or don't hear from. Whereas with ownership, I think fans can really respect someone that's putting their heart on their sleeve and sometimes losing money and sometimes making mistakes and admitting them. And I think that's a cool thing about what we've got in the NBL. And I think it's continuing to be a place that, like, I've got former teammates of mine and people in the NBA reaching out about trying to get shares in different clubs. So I think it's seen now as a league that's sustainable and doing well. It's
so cool to see to see basketball grow exponentially in Australia over the last 5 to 10 years, and it's been awesome. I guess with the technology and everything that's going on, you can actually access all these different leagues around the world, and it allows for Australia to be seen on that world map. And it's been so cool to see some big names come over here, and people like yourself, like you're saying, asking you about it. You're like, oh my gosh, like it's legit. Like it's not just like some, I'm not going to say cupcake league, but
it might have been when he played.
Oh gosh, he wouldn't take that too well. But it's cool to see a change over the years. He's been on this podcast, the man, and it's been so cool to see a change over the years, man. It's been awesome to see what they've been able to do with it and bring it to the status that it is now. And some news I want to talk about: the NBA playoffs are obviously on right now. By the time this comes out, there's a question mark whether the Lakers are going to knock the Warriors out, your team. And what's your thoughts on who's going to win it this year? Like, do you think it's going to be, one of those, the Lakers, like, that no one probably really expected at the beginning of this kind of playoffs, but now are going on a bit of a run? Or you think someone else will maybe take the top honors?
So hard to pick the season. I've got the game on right now in the background, Miami, New York. I never would have picked Miami to get this far. And they continue to surprise. The Lakers, were huffing and puffing into the plane, and they get in. It's just a hard to call. Boston now down as we speak, and they're down 3-2, going back to believe Philly for Game 6. So it's all over the place. I had Boston. I just thought they looked a bit more focused in the regular season after their loss, but they're not looking too good now. I think their coach, probably a little bit of inexperience, is playing his part. Warriors look very close to being defeated by the Lakers. I think the Warriors should make a series out of it. I thought it'd go 7, but it's hard to call. Look, my heart wants Denver. I'd love to see Denver get there. Just the season they've had, I think they're playing a really good, really enjoyable brand of basketball. Like the ball moves. Jokic is doing his thing. They've got a lot of weapons now, a lot of good role players. I think they should get that series against Phoenix, but I can't call it. I really can't. I call a different team, and Boston was my pick, and I thought they'd get through Philly 4-2, 4-3, and it looks like they might lose that series. So this is what you want, though. Like as a fan, like you want parity where you just can't call it. Like it's boring sometimes. Like obviously being a former Warrior, but after I left, you got the KD era Warriors. It was kind of like, all right, let's just hurry up and fast forward to the finals, give them their trophy, and move on. Not as fun for the average fan, right? Like it's kind of you kind of know what's going to happen barring injury. So this season, I think, has been much more enjoyable because you don't know who's going to win.
Yeah, it's like you said, every team that I picked is like on the ropes at the moment. So I'm just like shitting myself. I've got no idea what I'm going to get here. We're going for Jock at the moment. We're going for the Suns, but they're like you said, they're on the ropes at the moment too. So who knows what's going to happen, man? I'm excited though. It's it's good to be uncertain of who's going to be the winner. But we'll get to the very end of this, man. I want to ask this because I always like to finish on a positive note. You've mentioned them a few times, your kiddos, and you've mentioned how they don't quite understand, I guess, what you've been able to accomplish in your life and everything that you've been able to do and continuously do. How is it being a dad? Like, has it totally changed your life? And, that's like the priority. Like everyone talks about this moment you have your first kid and you never realize how much it affects you. And in talking to people, you love your kids more than anything. And it's so cool, I think, to have that family that loves you for who you are no matter what happens, and to have those people in your corner. And it's something that everyone I hope experiences in this life. And how do you feel now being a dad to the kiddos?
Oh, it's obviously great. It's unexplainable until you have kids, really. I wish, I always had a plan to have my kids towards the end of my career so that they're not in the hustle and bustle of the NBA, being traded, schooling, and all that. So my plan was that by the time I retire, or I've got 3 or 4 more years left in the league, let's say, professional sports. By the time they start school, I want to be based where I'm based at. I don't want them chopping and changing. But now, almost not regret, but I feel like I would have loved to have my kids earlier, just because those days where you're having a bad day or a bad season or a bad game, you come home and they don't give a shit. Like it's really cool just come home because you're dad, right? So that's been really cool. Just they're going through their little journey of starting school and starting junior sport. So I think going to their junior sports, bringing out a lot of memories for me about when I started and the joy that it brings and the ups and the downs and then also just like the two boys are just so completely different, in the way they go about things. Even different passions and how they react to adversity is completely different. It's kind of amazing. It's like they're not even related at times, and that's the beauty of having kids. And most people say that the brothers or brother and sister are always a little bit different when they handle things. So I enjoyed that, and I'm just thankful and lucky and privileged that I'm in a position in life where I don't need a full-time 9 to 5, and I can go and drop my kids off at school and pick them up, and I can go to local sporting things. And my parents did their best with that, but didn't have a lot of time for that at times. The sport they did, but like a lot of the school activities, they just were working, right? So I've got to really, I'm really thankful to be able to, basically be around them 24/7 and make sure they grow into respectable young men.
That's awesome. Are they playing basketball at the moment, or are they playing another sport?
No, not yet, man. Not yet. My the firstborn's kind of, I think he's anti what his dad did.
Yeah.
Kind of. Kids go through that phase, but he likes soccer at the moment. He's playing soccer at the moment. So I put the little one in soccer as well. But I'm trying to get him to do a bunch of different stuff. They do jiu-jitsu and soccer at the moment. We'll throw him into basketball next year. My 4-year-old's super athletic and super coordinated. He's already being recruited to play rugby at his school.
4 years old.
I'm like, he's 4 years. he's 4 years old, and they're like, oh, we spoke to your son. The head rugby coach, like, spoke to your son, and he said he wants to play rugby. I'm like, he's 4. Like, if you ask him to do you want to be a fireman, he'll be like, yes. But anyway, he's very, very spatially aware. So I just had a chuckle, like, I'm recruiting calls at 4 years old. But I have been doing a bunch of stuff. I think jiu-jitsu has been really good for him, especially for self-confidence. I highly recommend that for kids that, maybe are struggling a little bit or whatever. Like, awesome sport. Teaches them how to fall as well, which can be important for other sports. And soccer has been a blessing because it's like, a 6-year-old had some issues with his feet, like coordination, and he's just really transitioning out of that well with soccer because it's just teaching him, when he puts time and effort in training, that he's getting better and better. So I hope they'll be basketball. I think they'll get to a point where they realise, unless I'm a goalkeeper, soccer's probably not for me. I probably need to find something else. But I'm not one of those parents that's like, you must play basketball, you must play this. I'm like, do whatever you want, as much as you can till probably 9 or 10. And then we're going to be like, hey, pick one of these to go into full time, scrap the rest. That's kind of my mentality of it. I think the more you experience, the better it is.
Yeah, seriously, I think in the younger years of trying to figure out just kind of coordination of your body and everything else. Like I was to say, I played soccer, and then finally you pick one and kind of roll with it, similar to yourself. And we'll finish out. What's next for you, man? I know you're doing the Sydney Kings stuff. You're enjoying the family time. What other passions are you in at the moment?
I also do a podcast, much like yourself. So I'm going to kind of revamp that over the next month or two, the process of building what has been almost forever a full-time studio. So, much like yourself, we have a lot of guests lined up that I was cognizant on not having guests on until I'm fully professional. So looking forward to that. Still investing in a lot of different businesses and startups and some venture capital stuff here in Australia mainly, some stuff in the US. And playing hopefully a shitload of poker. I love playing poker, so that's kind of my vice away from everything else in the world. It's kind of my version of fishing or surfing or whatever. Mine is poker, because like you play poker and your brain's focused on the now. You don't focus about what happened yesterday or shit things going on in your life or the future. You're focused on that. So and then spending a lot of time with the family. So they're kind of my main things that keep my day going right now, and it's pretty crazy for the most part.
Appreciate it, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Andrew. Absolute legend, mate. If you haven't heard, listen to his podcast, Rogue Bogues. Absolutely awesome. He's got basketball and everything else he's covering. He's got some exciting guests coming up too. He's an absolute legend in the Australian sporting sphere, and I'm honored to have you on, man. You're someone I've always enjoyed listening to, enjoyed your journey, and over the years, and be able to watch you. And it's an absolute honor to talk to you. So I want to say a massive thank you for coming on and hanging out with us on the Mason Cox Show.
No worries. Thanks for having me.